Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Hope you're all having a great week so far. I am getting some much needed vitamin D today after what's been a really dreary couple of weeks here in North Wales. Weather-wise, we've had wind, we've had rain, we've had storms, but today I'm thankful that we've got some nice weather and I'm going to make the most of it and do some photography. But today, I want to challenge myself. Now, at the end of last year, I made a video about this lens, the Lumix 20 to 60mm variable aperture kit lens. It's a really versatile lens for me because the focal range sits in kind of a sweet spot. I typically like to shoot around 40mm. That's just my preference in terms of kind of visual style and in terms of field of view. And because this is a zoom lens, I do have a bit of wiggle room either side to enable me to finesse my compositions. But when I bought that lens and when I bought this camera, I kind of bought it as a bundle. And included in that bundle were two prime lenses, the 50mm f1.8 and the 85mm 1.8. And the reason I went for that bundle is because I've always been interested in prime lenses, but I've never really shot them. And I thought in this video what we could do is just have a look at the 50mm f1.8 because it's a prime lens that is so well regarded. Everybody has shot a 50mm prime, a nifty 50 at some point, and I'm curious to see why. I'm curious to see whether that's a good fit for my photography, and I want to see what all the fuss is about. So to make this video more interesting and possibly more immersive, I'm going to shoot everything at 50mm. Not just the photos, but all the B-roll, all the video. So everything you see is going to be at that focal length. I hope that will make it more immersive and potentially give you a better idea of what that field of view looks like in multiple applications. Now you'll have to excuse the dogs in the background. There's a lot of farms around here. It just kind of comes with the territory. But we'll persevere. Now, I think the reason that a lot of people tend to gravitate towards 50mm prime lenses is because 50mm is comparable to the field of view of human vision. And I completely understand the appeal of that, especially for beginners. It enables you to capture photos that are comparable to what you see with your eye, which makes composition a lot easier. You know, if you shoot with wide-angle lenses, you introduce distortion, that makes things look a little bit funky, and that can be a great creative choice, but can be quite challenging. And also you have to take into consideration that prime lenses are also a lot sharper than zoom lenses. You know, that's something that is really important and not something to overlook. It's why I decided to buy these prime lenses. It's because optically they will be superior to a zoom lens. But for me, the reason that 20 to 60mm lens has stayed on my camera for so long is because it is super versatile. And to be completely honest with you guys, I'm wondering if my tendency to gravitate to that 20 to 60mm zoom lens over the last few months has made me into somewhat of a lazy photographer. Because, you know, that's the thing about prime lenses, is that they introduce limitation into your photographic process. And that limitation can be a challenge sometimes. But who knows, maybe that's not important. Maybe there's just this virtuous thing amongst photographers where it is stated that photography has to be a struggle and that photos are more rewarding if you've had to, you know, fight for them a little bit. But to be honest, I don't really know if I buy that. Now, I guess I've had reservations about the 50mm focal length over the last couple of years, perhaps, because I did have a nifty 50 when I started photography, because I do feel like that focal length is easier to compose because it's a bit compressed. It enables you to sort of like hone in on your subject and remove sort of extraneous details from the frame. But I feel like as you get more skilled at photography and as you want to get more into composition and you learn more about composition, you typically find yourself being more confident at shooting wider because you can then play around with the pleasing jigsaw puzzle that is trying to, I guess, compile elements within your scene in a very neat and pleasing way. And I feel like that's why, for me, over the last year or so, I typically find myself shooting at around sort of 40mm. It's why that 20 to 60mm lens works well for me, because I can shoot at 35, 40, 45mm, and it allows me to kind of add more context to the scenes that I photograph, especially for my Borderlands project. It's not just about the subject, it's about the location that subject is within. It's the landscape surrounding it that tells so much of the story. And I feel like with 50mm focal lengths and with this prime lens, that's going to take a little bit of getting used to. Wow, now this oak tree is absolutely beautiful, so much bigger when you're close up to it. But I think one of the things that I'm really enjoying today about this 50mm prime is the cohesiveness it's giving all of the photos. I think something a lot of photographers want to do is create their own visual style. Whether you're a beginner, intermediate or advanced photographer, I think it's something that a lot of photographers strive for, because it's very pleasing to have your own unique fingerprint on your images. But a lot of people tend to believe that the way that you do that is all through photo editing, its colour and its contrast, and they neglect to think about the role that focal length can play in that. I think that's why cameras such as the Leica Q43 and a lot of these kind of like fixed focal length cameras, I think that's why they become so popular, because having a very fixed focal length does create that cohesion. Everything kind of has a similar sort of feel to it. And that's just something today that I'm really, really enjoying. And I think there's another reason why becoming familiar with that field of view and shooting at a very fixed focal length, I think there's another important benefit to that. So I'm back home. It's a completely different day because the battery on this microphone ran out whilst I was in the field, but I'm still at 50mm even though I'm at home doing a talking head. So trying to keep continuity alive as much as I can. But I wanted to just kind of summarize a few final thoughts that I was starting to make there earlier in the video. So firstly, around that point of creative style, and another advantageous benefit of shooting with prime lenses around creative style is that I was finding, as I was going out on that day and assessing scenes and just doing some photography, I found that my eye was becoming very accustomed to this focal length. It means that you're able to see things in the world around you and be able to kind of translate that into an image in your mind before you even look at the camera. And I think that's a really, really important skill to start developing, is that idea of seeing and being able to pre-visualize your images. Because you're shooting at a very fixed focal length, I think that's why prime lenses are a great tool in helping in that development. And because you're actually then shooting, at prime lenses and you're only looking at scenes that work at those focal lengths, that further adds to that level of cohesion and creating a very strong creative style. You've probably heard a lot of photographers mention the word limitation when they talk about prime lenses, and that limitation is something that is actually really beneficial. I've definitely found that when looking back at these photos. When I was out in the field, I was limited to what I could photograph. I couldn't photograph everything that I was coming across because not everything worked at 50mm. There are some scenes that benefit from shooting wider. There are other scenes that benefit from shooting a bit more cropped in. But I think that's where 50mm can be useful, because it kind of gives you best of both worlds, but it doesn't really kind of master either one of them. It's versatile, but not, I guess, like perfect in every scenario. You might have, remembered earlier I said that I like to shoot at around 40mm because I like to introduce the wider context of the location when photographing outdoors and photographing the landscape, because I feel like that tells the story. And shooting at 50mm doesn't always allow you to get wide enough. You have to sort of zoom with your feet and go further away, but that sometimes causes a bit of havoc compositionally. So that's why I've kind of shied away from 50mm in the past, because I've often found it slightly too, cropped in as a field of view. But I can't deny that this lens is a good all-rounder. It's just kind of finding the right scenes for it. It's always going to be a toss-up between versatility and, limitation. Sometimes we just want versatility to shoot whatever we want at any focal length, and sometimes we want limitation because that's going to help us grow as photographers. So really, it's just weighing up how you like to shoot. And I think I've discovered that prime lenses are really going to be beneficial, especially for my, Borderlands project, because I'm trying to create a cohesive body of work there. Shooting primes might help me achieve that. But if I'm doing casual photography, I'm not going to be too bothered about those kind of nuances. That's where the 20 to 60 millimeter is probably going to do the job just fine. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It wasn't really a video about this particular Panasonic lens, as great as it is and as much as I love it. It's more of an exploration of the focal length. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, do give the video a thumbs up and consider hitting the subscribe button if you've enjoyed my videos. Always appreciate your support, and I look forward to seeing you next week for another video. Take care, folks.